All right, time to talk some baseball with David Murphy. We're in the middle of the Major League Baseball postseason. Going to get into some Rangers talking points in a second. But one thing I wanted to ask you, Murph, I find this really interesting. In the DS and CS rounds, there are no days off. So could play in the DS rounds. You could have played up to 5 straight days, and the CS up to 7. And strategically, that changes things. You don't have that, the travel day off to rest your top relievers and maybe work in an extra start for a starting pitcher. In the past, you could maybe have your best starter go in games 1 and 4 on 3 days rest. Now games 1 and 4 would be on 2 days rest. That's just not an option. So I guess I'm curious, obviously as a player, you want the rest, but from like a strategic standpoint as a fan, do you prefer this model that maybe more closely replicates the regular season and rewards depth, or do you prefer the traditional model that you got to experience several times as a player, in which those off days were probably very much appreciated, especially considering it was the end of the season?
Yeah, I think the only way that I would be biased is if I was a current player and the roster matched up in such a way where the off days would benefit my team. But I think if I'm looking at it from my standpoint now, from more as a fan, I really like the format right now because your depth is challenged. And we play, obviously this year was different, but you think of a major league team that plays 162 over the course of 6 months. And then all of a sudden things change up in the postseason and there's more off days. You're able to do more things to manipulate your roster to where you can get, your top end starting pitchers or your bullpen guys more rest, as you just mentioned, and you can get them in the game more, which is great. It's probably great for the fans to watch and to see those guys more. But if you're talking about depth and what got you to the postseason, then I like the current model because you're challenged to be able to do some things that you probably had to do during the regular season and that you don't typically see. Take the Dodgers and Braves, the 12-run first inning, for example. Like, that is not only going to have a ripple effect for that day, that could possibly have a ripple effect for the entire series. And so I'm interested to see what happens for the rest of the series just because of that. And so you kind of have to weather storms.
Any big takeaways from what you've seen so far in the postseason, either the current series, the Astros and the Rays, the Braves, the Dodgers, or anything that took place prior?
Just enjoying seeing fans again at Globe Life and fans out there for the very first time. But I think just the quality of postseason baseball is always so much fun because whether you like it or not, there's going to be times throughout the course of watching regular season baseball, whether it's 60 games or 162 games, where guys just aren't going to be as locked in. They're not going to be as focused, especially from a hitting standpoint. Guys are simply going to give away at bats where you have the bases loaded and you're going to see a weak pop-up on the infield or something like that. I feel like things like that are a lot, you don't see them as much just because of the level of focus. Hitters are more likely to draw out 8, 10, 12 pitch at bats. Like the one we saw from the Rays the other night. The pronunciation of his name, is it Brusso?
Yeah, Brasso.
Brasso.
Yeah.
And just that was an incredible at bat that made for such a fun game to watch. So just a lot more quality at bats and just generally quality baseball in the postseason.
All right, let's talk Rangers, Murph. I think one of the bright spots from this past season was, I guess, generally speaking, getting to see young players. It's fun because maybe when you see the young players, it takes the sting of losing a game off because maybe expectations have changed a little bit as a fan. Internally, they go into every game expecting and wanting to win, obviously. One of the guys who I thought, really showed nicely was Leody Taveras, considering age, lack of, high level experience, just barely like a 50 or so games in AA. That's it prior to the season. And it seems like he's going to be the opening day center fielder next year. And defensively, he's already top notch. And I was impressed offensively. I know if you were to just go and look at his numbers, you wouldn't be blown away at all. But again, keep in mind his age, 22 years old. And he just, I thought he looked really comfortable. Like I didn't feel like he looked overmatched in the box, and showed flashes of qualities that could translate into this guy being not a feared like number 3 hole hitter, but a really quality hitter to go along with, great base running and outstanding defense. He, to me, was the biggest bright spot of the young guys. I'm curious what you thought about, what you saw from him this season.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the Rangers are in a place where I would feel completely comfortable with him being the opening day center fielder next year. He checks a lot of boxes. He's got speed. The defense is huge. And I feel like because he plays a premium defensive position where obviously it's great if you bring the bat with you, but I think that's huge for him because as a young player, we know that the bat is going to continue to develop. But if he goes out there and he plays good defense, I mean, that's kind of his number one job and his number one priority as a center fielder right now is just to help the pitching staff and just make outs. And, it's hard because I didn't really see many games. I guess I didn't see any games at the ballpark this year. I did all the away games. So I didn't see his jumps off the top of my head. I saw his jumps on TV, but I will say when you see contact, and then you see the camera pan to the outfielders, and you can kind of gauge what type of jump they got by how much they have a beat on a ball early on. I feel like there was night and day difference between when he was playing center field and when the rest of the guys were playing center field, whoever else it was. So I think he's going to be huge defensively, and the bat's just going to have an opportunity to continue. I did feel like he might have been overmatched early on in his first, say, 10 to 20 at bats. I feel like left-handed, he made the adjustments sooner. And then right-handed, there were some at bats where
you're talking when you say left-handed, you're talking about as a left-handed hitter or as against left-handed pitching?
Yes, as a left-handed hitter, he caught on sooner, and maybe because he had an opportunity to get more left-handed at bats. And then right-handed, it was a little bit more of a slow process, but I really liked the quality of his at-bats and the way that he finished up. So like I said, I mean, I'm a believer in this guy, and I think just the athleticism, as you mentioned, just the comfort in center field and at the plate. This guy's a big leaguer.
All right. One of the other bright spots, I guess, I don't know, not a bright spot during the year, but bright spot now as we head into the off season and look ahead to next, possibly June, unless it changes the draft. The Rangers picking second. The Rangers have picked first before, I think maybe picked second a couple of times, but this is not something that's happened too often. If you look at Rangers draft history, they did pick fourth after the 2014 season for the 2015 draft. And that was the year in which they got Dylan Tate. They, at the time, a lot of people were, pointing to Andrew Benintendi, who was on the board. Walker Buehler was on the board, although, Buehler was dealing with a back thing. He fell, I think, to the teens. Benintendi's, got off to a nice start in his career, although the last 2 years have not been anything, particularly outstanding. But, I think people would look and say, listen, if you're picking fourth in the draft, you'd like to come up with something better than Dylan Tate. Now, it did turn into Carlos Beltran, but that was short-lived in that 2016 season. You're picking second. It seems as if Kumar Rocker, the kid out of Vanderbilt, who would have been a first-round pick had he made it clear he would have signed out of high school, will go number one. What's crazy, though, Murph, is that you barely had college baseball last year. Who knows what college baseball this year is going to look like? Hopefully they have it. But there's so much unknown. But what is known is that when you're picking second, you've got an outstanding chance to help your organization in a big way. And I think this is a challenge for the Rangers. They've got to check this box. This is a big selection as they, whether they want to use the R word, rebuild or not. You've got to hit on picks like this because hopefully you're not picking in this spot too frequently. So you want to, let's do it this year and then maybe not do it next year, but, hopefully be able to hit on this pick. I know as a player, at the big league level, you're probably not thinking about this too much, but I don't know when you think of, hey, this team's got the second pick, what are the things that kind of stand out to you?
Just what a great opportunity it is. I know that you mentioned it's not the best thing to have the second pick, just judging on the season that the Rangers just had, but hey man, let's look at the positive. Franchises are going to go through their ups and downs. And it was an unfortunate season this year that Rangers fans did not expect. But yeah, let's look at the bright side, because let's look at the Cubs and let's look at the Astros and some recent World Series champions and how they got there. The Cubs got there by drafting the Chris Bryants and, assembling great young talent. The Astros got the Bregmans and the Correas and their young talent. So I think it's proven that World Series champions lately are built from a good young nucleus, good young core, that the Rangers, there's promising players in the minor leagues, but I don't know that there are those impact players quite yet. Maybe a Josh Young, which because of the season this year, we didn't quite get to see what he's capable of over a full minor league season, maybe guys like that. But at the same time, you want that guy that, once he gets to the major leagues. I mentioned Chris Bryant. I think everybody knew, hey man, this guy needs a little seasoning in the minor leagues. Once he gets to the major leagues, it's not a matter of if he's going to produce, he is going to produce. He's going to be an impact player, and he's going to lead this team in the right direction. So I'd love to see the Rangers get a player like that, and what a great opportunity at number 2 to do that. If Kumar Rocker does go number 1, who knows what number 2 looks like, especially we have to see the high school and the college season play out. There's always a wide variety of talent from the state of Texas, whether it be a high school player or a college player. But at the same time, it's not like you're going to be biased toward a Texas guy as you normally would. Because if you're number 2, you really need to make sure that you get the best guy on the board. And I know that there's talk here and there about slot value, and you want to maximize your budget. And if your slot value is X, you want to see if you can get this guy for $1 million lower. I think that the priority is go get the most talented player, go get the guy that's going to impact your organization the best, get to the big leagues quickly, and lead this youth movement that we talked so much about here in 2020.
Last thing, Murph, one of the, I think, really, other than the Lance Lynn, Joey Gallo decisions, which may or may not have a deadline of opening day, do they keep them? Do they move them? One set of decisions to me that, really interesting and could be challenging, what the Rangers are going to do with Elvis and Rougie. Let's lay them out. Obviously you got Rougie, he's not old, but you've been through this, a few years. Elvis is, he is older, he's not ancient, but he's 32 years old, I think, turning 33 in the middle of next year. And if you're going to, really have a youth movement, typically a guy who's not performing at a high level, who's of that age, is not going to be a part of it. The challenge with both these guys is that neither of them have contracts that will be easy to move in any year, especially a year in which you'd imagine a lot of teams would be shedding payroll. So I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of options, I guess. What are your thoughts on what the Rangers should or can do with those guys?
It's a decision where I'm glad I'm not a member of the Rangers front office trying to figure out exactly what to do, because in both cases, you're looking at 2 years where each player underperformed. You're looking at a guy in Elvis who has been there. He's done it. He's had we saw him a few years ago have a 20 home run season. Is that the guy that he's going to be most seasons? Probably not. I'd say he's more of a 10 to 15 guy. He can hit 270 or 280. He can play good defense. I still believe that he's plenty capable of doing that. He doesn't have the speed that he used to, but he has good instincts and he can run the bases well. Rougie has, the ceiling is still up there, but I think the question is similar to a guy like Chris Davis. Is it just a point with this franchise and this organization where, it's time to call it a day? And I know with that ceiling that he has, you hate to see him go, because what if he goes and he tears it up somewhere else? And then you're like, oh man, we should have kept him. But I think as a player, there can be that stagnant feeling where you've been in a place a long time. things just aren't clicking anymore for whatever reason. There's so many different levels, so many different ways that you could explain that. But I think that could be a case with Rougie where a change of scenery could really help him out. I think the question is what could we really get back? Because you would want to get something back. And right now, there's not a ton of trade value for either one, I'm sure. And so I think the major benefit would be to try to unload some salary, which I don't know exactly what you could do there either. So, you could look at it as a front office and say, well, if we are rebuilding, we could just go ahead and keep these guys around and fill in around them. But on the other hand, you could say, all right, well, we are starting this youth movement. And we are giving these young guys opportunities. So we need to open up as many spots as we can and not put veterans out there on the field so that we can have younger guys go in and win these spots. So I think the answer, if I'm giving you an answer, I would say that I would definitely try to trade one of them just to open up a spot in the middle infield. I don't know if I can say, I would say, move the one that you can get the best deal for, that another team will eat the majority of their salary, or in a trade package where you could get the best possible return. So I don't know if there is necessarily a definitive answer on that.
Murph, enjoy the rest of the postseason. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, you too. Always a pleasure.